Hello everyone, how you doing today? I'm Adrian Lloyd, this is just my stupid opinion, and I want to thank you for joining me today. And today we're going to be discussing Chris Cornell and Chester Bennington. As you may know, Chris Cornell was the front man of both bands Soundgarden and Audioslave, who was found dead earlier this year on May 18th. And then recently, just the other day, we lost Chester Bennington, who was the lead singer for Linkin Park. And it was kind of weird because these were two close friends who died very similar ways. They were both found dead by hanging in their hotel rooms. And Chris Cornell, and actually both of them had suffered in the past with substance abuse issues. But after the death of Chris Cornell, one rumor kept circulating, and it has only been emphasized with the death of Chester Bennington, that these two were about to blow the whistle on a huge music industry pedophile ring. You profit from fear and hate, hoarding wealth and amassing power. The walls have been unleashed. We will not submit or cower. It's humanity's darkest side. We are ruled by thieves and liars. Well, that is a hell of an accusation to level. But this definitely caught my interest because in a recent episode I was showing how there have been a bunch of pedophile rings exposed in 2017. So when I found out that Chris Cornell may have, by rumor, been trying to expose a pedophile ring in the music industry, I got interested. Conspiracy or not, I got interested. As soon as I googled about Chris Cornell, his death, about Chris Cornell pedophile ring, there were a bunch of mainstream media articles that came up, started talking about being fake news. But still, I got interested because a couple times when you started Googling, at least maybe, again, you're getting a little more specific, but I started Googling about his autopsy report and more into the pedophile rings. So I started finding articles of people who seemed to believe otherwise, because everyone was saying that it was suicide. Chris Cornell committed suicide. Even his wife has pushed back against this. She said that she didn't believe that Chris Cornell wanted to die. Now, this is a man who had substance abuse in the past, but his autopsy report spoke about how it had no scarring on the wrist. Now, there are other ways of self-destruction besides cutting yourself, but self-mutilation is a good show that you are prepared to commit suicide. I would say more so than just substance abuse. So there's no scarring on his wrist or anything of that to indicate suicide. But there was one thing that I found that was very interesting as I was looking through the autopsy report that came out of Wayne County Medical Examiner. In this, the medical examiner, this was Theodore Brown, MD, Assistant Medical Examiner. He performed a post-mortem examination of the body of Chris Cornell at Wayne County Medical Examiner's Office on May 18th, 2017. First, let's look a little bit into what was told about the death of Chris Cornell. So, on May 18th, 2017 at 12:15 a.m., Cornell's body was found by his bodyguard in the bathroom of his room at the MGM Grand in Detroit after performing a show with Soundgarden at the Fox Theater on May 17th. He was lying on the floor with an exercise band around his neck and blood in his mouth. An MGM medic and EMS personnel were unable to revive Cornell. Cornell was pronounced dead by the doctor at 1:30 a.m. Police ruled out homicide by reviewing hotel surveillance footage, which showed nobody entered or exited the suite after his bodyguard left around 11:35 p.m. The cause of death was determined to be suicide by hanging. Cornell was 52 years old. Cornell's wife said, "When we spoke after the show, I noticed he was slurring his words. He was different. When he told me that he had taken an extra Ativan or two, I contacted security and asked that they check on him." When the Wayne County Medical Examiner released their autopsy report and toxicology report, that was on June 2nd, 2017, the coroner confirmed that the manner of death was suicide by hanging and that the drugs did not contribute to the cause of death. Found in Cornell's system was the sedative butalbital, 4 doses of the anti-anxiety medication lorazepam, which is also known as Ativan, the decongestant pseudoephedrine, and the metabolite neuropseudoephedrine and caffeine, along with naloxone, used to reverse opioid overdose, and which was reportedly administered by EMTs. Following the release of the autopsy and toxicology report, Cornell's widow released a statement to the press. Many of us who know Chris well noticed that he wasn't himself during his final hours and that something was very off. We have learned from this report that several substances were found in his system. After so many years of sobriety, the moment of terrible judgment seems to have completely impaired and altered his state of mind. Something clearly went terribly wrong, and my children and I are heartbroken and are devastated that this moment can never be taken back. We very much appreciate all the love we have received during this extreme difficult time and are dedicated to helping others in preventing this type of tragedy. One thing that I also find a little bit interesting about this with Chris Cornell and in the relation to Chester Bennington from Linkin Park is that he was lying on the floor with an exercise band around his neck, and that was exactly the same thing that happened with Chester Bennington. They happened to just commit suicide the same way. And Chester Bennington, when he died, that was also on Chris Cornell, what would have been Chris Cornell's 53rd birthday. Whether he had some sort of grief from his close friend being killed and he committed suicide in the same way, maybe, but it seems a little bit weird to me. I decided to look up the autopsy report from the Wayne County Medical Examiner. And one thing that I thought was interesting that was not getting mentioned in any of the mainstream media, even when they were talking about this autopsy report, is if you go look into it and you look at evidence of treatment, on the second paragraph, it says that the anterior aspect of the right 2nd through 6th and left 2nd through 5th ribs were fractured. 9 of his ribs were fractured. Now, some say that this might have been from the EMT teams trying to resuscitate him using CPR. What makes me most suspicious is that this was never mentioned at all, that he had 9 ribs fractured. Even if it was because of medical teams trying to resuscitate him using CPR, anybody like me who goes looking for the autopsy just to look into it, this is going to look suspicious to us. It's the fact that he has 9 fractured ribs and nothing is mentioned on it. Especially if we're thinking that he may have possibly been about to blow a whistle on a huge pedophile ring inside the music industry. And when people compare this to Chester Bennington's death, we look at how it's practically the exact same death. It happened on Chris Cornell's 53rd, what would have been his 53rd birthday. It's possible it was a suicide out of grief, but I don't know. I don't see it that way. And now people are suggesting that Chester Bennington was about to blow the whistle on what really happened with Chris Cornell's death. And then he just ends up to be dead almost the exact same way. It's still early on in his death, so we don't know what's going on yet. There hasn't been an autopsy report released yet. But let's look a little more into what Chris Cornell was apparently going to blow the whistle on. Well, in the past, Chester Bennington had spoken about when he was a child he'd been sexually abused by an older male friend. Bennington, along with his wife and Chris Cornell, set up the Chris and Vicky Cornell Foundation, who worked with charities taking care of children rescued from child trafficking networks. So they were already personally involved with getting kids saved from pedophile rings. And allegedly, Chris Cornell discovered a black book during his charity work, and the book contained a list of elite pedophile rings, which was part of a global child abuse network. Cornell was about to reveal the name shortly before he was found dead in his room, and this has been the allegation that had been thrown around him about to blow the whistle on a pedophile ring. So now, Chester Bennington allegedly was going to release what had happened with Chris Cornell, so he's probably, according to what people are saying, he was going to tell everybody about this little black book. So some friends have talked about how Cornell's death really affected Bennington, and that he was not quite the same ever since his friend died. And also that Chester knew something about Cornell's death, which was troubling to him. but he was far from suicidal. And this was sort of the same thing that people said about Chris Cornell when he died, that he was not suicidal. His wife pushed back, at least initially pushed back, that he was not suicidal. This all just looks too suspicious to me. The timing. The way it was done. They both did it the exact same way, using an exercise band on the back of a door. To me, there are too many coincidences involved for me to believe that they're just coincidences. Oh, and what about suicide notes? Why are there no suicide notes that were being found? That's one very common thing when people commit suicide, is they tend to reveal their final secrets to people. There are signs to people who commit suicide. Giving away personal possessions is number one. To me, and with somebody who has experience with people who have been suicidal, this doesn't really seem like the symptoms of two people that were suicidal. Like, the substance abuse is one thing, but again, they both at one point got clean. Did they both fall off the wagon at the same point? I mean, I could understand more Chester Bennington if it happened after Chris Cornell died, but Chris Cornell was apparently off all the drugs and then was all fucked up again the night before he died. But even his wife said at that point she didn't think he was suicidal, and they said the drugs didn't affect his suicidal. They said the drugs didn't have an effect on him committing suicide. So what was it then? Was he just that depressed all of a sudden? Trying to find evidence of this black book so far is we haven't been able to find anything. But as we look around, and we've seen much more exposés of pedophile rings, people talking about it being part of the elite and powerful, it's really a lot more believable than we think. Music industry does sexualize underage children when, if we look at some of these teenage stars, they're definitely being much more exploited than they should at their age. Is it really that crazy to think that there might not be more going on behind the scenes than we think? In one article, there was a former child actor who spoke about their rise up through, they spoke about their personal experience with pedophilia inside the industry. And it kind of ranges. It goes from it's in the entertainment industry. He talks about the BBC, talks about child acting. It seems to range all over. So this article is from the 21st Century Wire, and it's called "I Ran the Gauntlet of Pedophiles in the Entertainment Industry, Says Former Child Actor." And it's written by Ben Fellows. In this article from 21st Century Wire, this child actor talks about how they went to audition for the Royal Shakespeare Company. And during their time, they had a chaperone. And that their chaperone told them that there were certain actors that they were not allowed to be alone with. And they didn't, at the time, he didn't realize why, but the chaperones understood because they had sexual attractions to little children. They were pedophiles. So certain rules were set down for him. He couldn't go into certain actors' dressing room. And then he talked about how there was one time where he broke that rule, went in, and then the door was closed behind him. He was offered alcohol. And before he knew it, he was offered alcohol. And then, before he knew it, his chaperone was busting down the door to come get him. So as we continue reading this article, it goes on to say, however, once I'd entered the entertainment industry proper, I was not so lucky and ran a gauntlet of pedophiles, both at the BBC and other television production companies, and also in theaters, as well in commercial photo shoots. In fact, almost every production was involved with it. I was targeted in some way or another. Looking back, it would not be an exaggeration to say that the problem is both institutional and systemic in the entertainment industry. Systemic in the entertainment industry, so it's not just exclusive to one. It goes all over. And the next time I do cover these pedophile rings, I'm going to be covering to do with Hollywood, because there seems to be a lot there. Corey Feldman has spoken out against the pedophile rings in Hollywood, so has Elijah Wood, and many other actors and actresses as well, saying how it's a huge problem in the industry. And we're having many of them who talk about it seems to be systemic all over, no matter where you are. The music industry, television, movies, radio. BBC, fuck. It's the goddamn BBC. And now they're having pedophile problems. What is going on in this world? Seriously, someone please explain this to me, because there just seems to be, everywhere I look now, it has to do with pedophilia. Pedophile bust here, ring busted there, 200 people arrested here. This industry is tainted with it. What is the attraction of fucking underage children? Continue on through this article. It says, the casting couch may seem like a funny, perhaps even mythical old Hollywood-style approach to casting. As preteen and as a young teenager, I attended many auditions as a child where I was asked to take my top off and pose for photographs, and I was positioned by both male and female casting directors at the time. After one audition for Coca-Cola commercial, the police came to my parents' home. They advised my mother that I had inadvertently become a potential target of a known pedophile ring. It turned out that the well-known casting director had taken pictures of me topless, and those pictures then appeared in what was described as a catalog and was passed to other pedophiles within the company and to external pedophiles. These were professionals within the industry operating under the cover of an entire production company working with blue chip clients. Holy shit. An entire fucking production company working to distribute pedophilia porn. Moving on. On another more frightening occasion, I was chased around the dressing room by a naked actor who was invited me into their dressing room at the Theatre Royal at the Drury Lane, and this actor was extremely famous. I was advised by the director of the musical that I was not to complain or tell anyone of this incident. I was 13 years old, so I didn't. It was not uncommon, and on multiple occasions, that I was propositioned and called into fake casting. One fake casting note was with the world's most successful theater productions, West End Broadway, where I was systematically harassed over a 12-month period, whilst having a leading role in the musical dangled like the proverbial carrot in front of my face. When I read things like this, about how systemic and widespread the problem of pedophilia is, and then I hear a story about somebody like Chris Cornell is about to blow the whistle of pedophile ring in the music industry, ends up dead. And one of his closest friends ends up dead in the same manner. And they both have some connection to this, and they both in the past have connection to pedophilia or stopping it. As I said, there was an organization put in place by Chris Cornell to help victimize children. It's hard for me not to believe that they weren't about to blow a whistle on pedophile rings. I do not have the smoking gun yet, but there is much, much deeper investigation necessary. So this is only part one. Keep your eyes open for the rest of this series as I investigate deeper into this network of disgusting pedophile rings. Thank you for joining me. I'm Adrian Lloyd. This is Just My Stupid Opinion. I'll catch you soon.